And welcome to the SpartanMag.com. VCast Jim Comparoni, Paul Konyndyk at the George and Sally Perlis Plaza. Is it Plaza or Plaza? Michigan accent, it's Plaza. It's Plaza. We'll go in the middle and call it Plaza. SpartanMag.com. Got a big football game. Tackle football, Paul Konyndyk. American football right over here in that stadium. Michigan State, UCLA Bruins. High noon. Homecoming.
I just glitched out, man. You're talking about pronunciations of Midwestern words. I thought of our 8-hour car ride on the way back from Nebraska.
You had to deal with me for 10 hours.
Yeah.
8 hours in the metric system.
So anyways.
So it's American. It's homecoming. You got your date lined up for homecoming, the big dance? There's no homecoming dance, but anyway, big game.
There isn't?
No, I don't think so. There's a homecoming.
I wouldn't have been invited anyways.
I think no, someone would probably invite you, but it's a big game. You can't. This is one of those games where Michigan State, the week after at Indiana, no one's going to expect them to win. Maybe something could happen. There's the games like that on the schedule. Then there's these games that you have to win. This is a must-win situation for Michigan State if they want to make progress toward, their floor goals, which is to get to a bowl game, they said. And UCLA coming off that big win against Penn State, the biggest upset college football's had in several years, in my opinion. Big game, Paul Konyndyk.
Yeah, and you talk about the floor, bar for success this season. And I think it's a realistic. It's not like you kind of. There's no way they're going to back into a 600 or a 500 season. You got to beat UCLA, and we're going back to what we said in every single podcast or every single VCast to this point in the season. You're going to have to win one on the road, but it starts this weekend. Now they're at home. They've said there's good weeks. Been a good week of practice. UCLA is not going to sneak up on anyone now after that upset of Penn State. So maybe Penn State did them a favor, and I'm pretty sure that the version of UCLA that beat Penn State isn't going to be the same one that is in this stadium on Saturday.
It'd be hard to duplicate that.
But that said, I do think Michigan State needs to prepare as if they're facing a team that's every bit as good as the one they played and lost to, and in some ways, honestly, I think they will face a better quarterback than they faced last week. And
100%.
And I'm not being disrespectful to Dylan Raiola, but UCLA's quarterback can hurt you with his feet and scrambling. That's difficult to prepare for because you can have everything. You can have everything in coverage. And everything right in your front seven, and he can scramble. We see the same benefit for Aiden Childs for Michigan State. I don't think Michigan State's going to face a quarterback that's going to get stuck on his first read and then glitch out after that. So as much as we've heard this week, and I know that getting sacks is a positive and is something that the defense needed, and I know rush and coverage worked well together, but coverage didn't have to work as hard this week or last week against Nebraska as I have to work this week, because I don't know, that's probably the only quarterback, sans maybe Western Michigan, that they faced that you take away the first read and you're in like Flynn. Yeah,
we talked about that in the pre-snap read and the VCast after the game. Raiola, all the accolades, but if you get him past the first read, Joe Rossi was talking about that today, not specifically about him and about that, but Rossi thought that in the Nebraska game, Michigan State played their best coverage of the season, and that's where the coverage and the pass rush worked together. Now, I would add to that, he said it was Michigan State's best pass coverage in the slot all season specifically, which is interesting with Ade Willie being out. They had Amarion Smith in there starting, and then he mentioned, Malcolm Bell played in the slot a little bit. Dontavius Nash, the transfer from East Carolina, played for the first time and played extensively, and all those guys are pretty good. And that coverage was good, and what that did was that got Raiola to his second read. And we talked about that in the pre-snap read, that if you get him to the second read, his productivity, his effectiveness drops off significantly. That's where the sacks came in. And he and Nebraska are exactly what I thought they were. And they let him off the hook, Paul. Michigan State could have won that game.
Absolutely.
They've got the potential to do that. They've got the potential to win games like that. So they'll shake it off. They've got this one. Joe Rossi had an interesting comment today. He said, he's been involved with teams that have, changed coordinators in the past, and in his mind, the UCLA team that went 0-4, he says that team doesn't exist anymore, which is what you tell your players. This is a new team. They just beat Penn State. I went back and watched that game. I've not really studied every position, But Nico Mayaleva, I don't know if I'm saying that right. It's a beautiful name. I apologize for getting it wrong. Nico I, all kinds of talent. Gary Danielson in that broadcast compared, he said he's having a Vince Young type of game. Vince Young was the quarterback at Texas, won the national title, right? I get the quarterbacks mixed up. Vince Young, thin guy, all that arm, all that elusiveness, turn a scramble into a 30, 40-yard game. Gary Danielson said it was a Vince Young type performance, and he's got that kind of, still just a true sophomore, and Vince Young is a true sophomore, had a long way to go. Nico I has a lot of talent, and it really came off in that game. I'll be eager to see if UCLA, if they come in with a hangover coming back in here, playing at 9 a.m. their time. A lot of people are going to be interested to see what UCLA brings after that game last week.
Yeah, I mean it's a tough situation for them when Michigan State played in the first noon game and for as long as I can remember.
They didn't have one last year, did they?
I don't think I think someone mentioned to Darius Snow today that he hasn't played a noon game during his entire career. I don't know if that is correct.
That can't be true.
I don't think that's true, but
he's been playing here for 20 years.
I know, but it seems like we rarely have a 4 o'clock game or a 3:30 game, and this noon game is going to be a problem for UCLA. The other thing too is when you have what Penn State went through, and you're going all the way out into the West Coast. We see a lot of times where there's like blowout type of games or offenses that don't do much all of a sudden look really good, and a lot of guys look like Vince Young or whoever you want to use the comparison to, and some of that has to do with the travel. So we'll see if the reverse of that is true.
Yeah.
I think it's good. Just I'll go back to what I said earlier. It's good that Michigan State saw the best version of UCLA.
Yes.
And expects to face the best version of UCLA, because if they're anything, if they're expecting anything else besides that, then that's where there's a problem. And Michigan State does have a lot of stuff to tighten up. You asked Joe Rossi about the defense getting closer and if they're closer to playing a complete game. My sense from him today, whenever those type of questions were asked, there's a little bit of agitation on his part. He wants to see that complete game. And Joe Rossi's got a little bit of, he's always amped up a little bit, but he's amped up this week. He wants to get a complete game for Michigan State, and I think he's disappointed that they haven't got it to this point.
He's eager. He's fired up. He likes the progress, and you could sense that he feels that they're on the cusp of something. He said, when he answered that question, he said that they had a really good week of practice during the bye week, a really good practice last week prior to the game, and he says they've had 2 great practices this week. His word, great practices. So the next thing they have to do is not every program is going to be, I don't want to say Nebraska was one-dimensional, but they had a bead on what to get done there. UCLA is going to have their little trickiness and so forth. Indiana's going to be a handful. Everybody knows that. But what Michigan State needs to do, they did not stop the run against USC, but most teams, they contain it pretty well. There was one play that got out for the 23-yard touchdown. I asked him a little bit about that off podium, and it was a safety fit that kind of got lurked around and got closed off. And also they gave up too much daylight at the rush edge position. He didn't mention it, but it was 41 Santiago. Kind of had a pass rush mentality on 2nd down and 3 when he should have squeezed that a little bit. So that led to daylight, which led to more daylight, and the running back found it. But for the most part, they kept a decent lid on the ground game. Decently, they hold Nebraska to 265 yards total offense, whatever it is. But the tunnel screen gets out, and the deep one on 3rd and 10. On the deep one on 3rd and 10, Joshua Eaton, who's having a pretty good season, but and you don't see him get targeted a lot, so he's not leaving guys open a whole lot. But he had a little mistake in the USC game on that 4th down when it was cover 3, and he sank too much and gave up an easy out route. On this one, it was man-to-man. We talked about after the game, Nebraska went unbalanced. First time they showed that formation all game, maybe first time all season. Brought that number 44, that tight end, Lindenwood, whatever his name is. They feature him a lot, but he was covered up. He was not eligible. So they spring this out. So they put pressure on the defense to realize who's eligible, who's not. Michigan State went corners over. They had 3 corners over there on that side. That included Josh Eaton on the number 3 receiver to the inside. Usually Eaton doesn't, that's his name, right? Josh Eaton. He from Texas State transfer. Number 7. I know their names in games, but sometimes I get their names mixed up. I'm getting old. But he's played a lot of football this year, but he rarely has the number 3 receiver to the inside. And on this one, the way it was, I think Nebraska could see pre-snap read, okay, it's going to be man-to-man. Eaton is an off man-to-man. A lot of times he's in more of a press man-to-man or in between. When you know you're an off man-to-man, all the coaching symposiums and manuals and everything. If it's man-to-man, the stuttering go route, it works a lot better against off-man than it does press. And so he's over there, it's man-to-man, it's off, and he gets a stutter and out, and he bid on it. And I remember a week earlier, he sank too far on the 4th and 3. I don't know if I don't know if there's an option route or what. Like, we got man-to-man. We're gonna get him to bite on a stutter and out. Stutter out, beat him, 50 yards, turn the game around. Those things, you're going to give up plays here and there. It wasn't like an assignment communication error. Nebraska just, isolated a certain guy on a certain thing, on a certain look that they hadn't shown, and took the cheese a little bit. Those plays like that. Now the tunnel screen, Malik Spencer didn't leverage it back to the help. They're close to playing the defense kept getting put in bad situation in that game. They kept fighting off the ropes and doing a good job. They were really close to carrying the team and winning a game in Nebraska. The defense had 90% of it, but those little 10% gets away from them. Rossi wants to tighten those up. You're never going to have a perfect game, but there was progress.
Yeah, and Rossi's an attention to details guy. We hear all the time about like how he's like, dot your I's, cross your T's kind of guy, and you have every scenario taken care of. So that's got to drive him crazy. When they do have a good plan, they do have overall good defensive execution, and to have a couple plays get away from them. And meanwhile, it's not just the fault of the defense for that loss. You could pin that on special teams alone if you wanted to, but there's room for improvement on in all three phases of the game for sure.
And now a word from a sponsor. It's an On3 sponsor, BetMGM. If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, and I've got some disclaimers I have to read, bear with me on these. Use bonus code ON3, and you will get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using bonus code ON3. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game. You will receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your bet loses. Just make sure you use bonus code ON3 when you sign up. And a disclaimer, see betmgm.com for terms. 21 and over only. U.S. promotional offers not available in New York, Nevada, Ontario, or Puerto Rico. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. 1-800-GAMBLER. Gambling problem? Call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY in New York. Or text HOPE-NY. In Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP. In Massachusetts, call 1-800-BETS-OFF. In Iowa, it's 1-800-BETS-OFF. In Massachusetts, 1-800-327-5050. First bet offer for new customers only, subject to eligibility requirements. Rewards are non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire in 7 days. And this is done in partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. Don't forget, if you've not signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code ON3 and get your $1,500 first bet offer today. And if you have a gambling problem, 1-800-GAMBLER for sure. Michigan State, as far as offense goes, what are your thoughts about where they stand offensively and what needs to get done with this game against UCLA, who's had a porous defense? Michigan State, the problems on first and second down, which led to third and long all day against Nebraska. Nebraska's pass defense statistically is outstanding, and Michigan State's another one that had trouble with that. Now it should be a little less resistance in this one.
Yeah, I would have thought that Michigan State would have been able to run the football better against Nebraska. Now I didn't think I did not think that Michigan State was going to just pound it down their throat coming off the bye week, and Nebraska did go really physical during the bye week in practice because they wanted their run defense to be better. But a lot of people give Aiden Childs a hard time about that game, and I've said all season long, and I've been pretty consistent on this. I think you would agree with me on this as well. But for this offense to work as well as it needs to work, you have to have the threat of the run, and you have to be able to run the football. Michigan State was bad running the football, except for Aiden Childs' scrambles against Nebraska, and that offense isn't going to be what it needs to be if you don't have the threat of the run. So they better get in there and they better run the football effectively, against UCLA. Now I do think it's an opportunity for Michigan State to get back on track, and they need to, because if you're going to have any chance of getting to that threshold of bowl eligibility, Michigan State has to be able to run the football against average to maybe a slightly above average run defenses.
can't have all those negative plays in the second. First and 10 run plays, I think I counted up 14 of them, and 5 were negative yardage. An article over at SpartanMag.com. Give us a like here in this channel. Go to SpartanMag.com. $1. You get our coverage of Michigan State football and basketball. $1 for a week. You can try it out. You'll like it. Run game, it's offensive line. Offensive line's behind schedule. I know that they've got the injuries. Luka Vincic would have been starting. Ramil would have been starting. You know, a lot of teams have injuries and so forth. But pass protection, you know, Aiden Childs could not trust it. Run game, didn't have it. And if you're a quarterback trying to run an offense, when you don't trust your protection, you get hit heavy early in the game. And it's, you know, it's going to be in your mind all game long. And we saw that. Childs wasn't quite himself in some ways. If you're a quarterback, you get hit early, you can't trust your pass protection, don't have a run game, you're going against the nation's best pass defense, and it's 20-mile-an-hour winds. Good luck having a quarterback having a good day in those situations. But to his credit, he did what he could with his feet, showed that heart that everybody knows that he has, willed the comeback, and he was the guy that did it on a lot of off-script stuff. You know, so they've got a leader in Aiden Childs, and the situation should be easier this weekend, Paul.
Yeah, you want the off-script stuff to work on occasion, but you don't want it to be your bread and butter, because then you get in a situation where your quarterback's going to get killed. I just feel like that early hit that he took where he did go to the tent, that was about worst-case scenario for Michigan State. But on a day, like you mentioned, the wind and how windy it was.
Everything.
I mean, it was to the point, like, after the game where when we were doing the VCast in the stadium, I was worried about the tripod for the camera tipping over, and I was worried that I was going to have to go out there and save it before it went over. I say that because you have those conditions, and you also have a defense that hasn't given up an explosive all year long. So you're playing right into their hands if you can't run the football, or if you don't have a short passing game. And Michigan State didn't use the tight ends, didn't really throw to their running back.
They actually threw the tight ends.
But not productively, as they have in some of the other games where you're getting 5 or 6 catches for 60 yards.
My bad. Alessio threw to the tight ends,
right.
But it was late. But go ahead.
So
they did. But,
so if you can't throw downfield, and Childs wants to throw downfield. So it kind of goes against his grain as a quarterback, what they were able to do. But if you're not on schedule, and they were never on schedule in that game, it's going to be a bad day for Aiden Childs. I think it's it's a learning experience, an opportunity for growth. That was a loud stadium. A lot of things didn't go Aiden Childs' way, but he's got to regroup from that. And I think in this game, though, they have to be able to run the football effectively, and it's not, it is the offensive line to some extent. You mentioned the injuries. Well, to me, that doesn't matter as much because of the fact that you're rotating guys left and right, and it should be better than that. So I think they got to take a look at, okay, what aspect of this operation isn't working, and you've had 2 straight weeks pretty much of not being able to run the football. They've got to create some competition if they haven't already done so in practice, or make a position change. And I'm not one that would suggest making change for the sake of change, but I do think there are some young, talented guys in the room that maybe if given some reps, maybe get a chance to get it done. There's some aspects of the offensive line play I don't see being any worse than unless they know better than I do, but. At this point, I think if you've got half a season left, maybe it's time to make an investment in the future with the young guy that could catch up to where the other guys are. I don't know, but they've got to be better running the football, and it's not just offensive line. It's got to be like quarterback identifying things, changing the plays, put them in the right situation. The tight ends have got to be actively involved and effective, and wide receivers have to be physical in the run game, and it kind of all works together. I expect them to run the football better this weekend at home, but it's got to happen. And if it doesn't happen, Aiden Childs is going to get banged up real quick, and he'll be looking at a season-ending injury before long.
The operation needs to be more buttoned up. You can't be blowing timeouts, two timeouts in your first drive of the second half, things like that. The delay a game penalty on the punt, just an operational thing where it was an infraction. It's end up with a blocked punt. Everybody knows about the punt coverage. They do those things. If they don't get those things fixed, they might not win 5 games. So they're on it. I think defense is showing progress. O-line's got to show some progress. I think the Nebraska defense is not great, but the pass defense is, and the coverage was good, and they rotate cover. They change coverages without screwing themselves up. So it's on the quarterback to have a longer read, and he wasn't getting time to have a longer read on those things. In that regard, I think Nebraska is going to be the second best defense they play all year, next to Michigan probably. So that's behind them. They can learn from it and try to get more going. I wouldn't be surprised if Rustin Young starts at left tackle. No inside information. Just looking at the way things have gone. He went in, played 6 snaps, looked all right. I thought he was somewhat functional against USC. Credit to him as a young guy coming along. Get Connor Moore back on his more comfortable right tackle side. I think you might see that. And, work Lepo in a little bit more if he's healthy or whatever, if you don't want to give up on that. I thought Christian Phillips, in some ways, is starting to play his best football, so that's positive. And Goldman remains pretty solid, pretty good. And but you can't have, gain 2 instead of lose 4. Get to 2nd and 8 instead of 2nd and 14. Not asking you to be, chunk plays of gaining 8 every time. Just stay out of those 4-yard losses on 1st and 10.
Yeah, that's the problem because, they had running backs coach Keith Benafa out there the week before, the Nebraska game, and he was talking about that, exactly what you're talking about. He's talking about 4 or 5 and 6 yard gains, staying running your play the way it's blocked up, and he felt like they were hunting, explosives. That's what he talked about. But the 4 or 5 and 6 yard runs were not there against Nebraska, and that's a problem that absolutely has to be fixed. And I do like Connor Moore as a run blocker over on the right side. I do think that when he's been over there, that's a source of comfort, and I kind of feel like that it's been pretty consistent. Run blocking has been fairly consistent when he's been at right tackle.
Paul, as you know, Michigan's recycling rate has fallen from 90% to 73% in recent years. Michiganders are squandering $105 million per year by not taking back their bottles and cans. That's hurting the environment, people. So help the environment, help yourselves. They're your beaches, your lakes, your roads. Help the environment. Take those bottles and cans back. Take them back. A message from Schupan, ladies and gentlemen, a great Michigan company dedicated to recycling and dedicated to your Michigan State Spartans. I think Rustin Young is looking good for the future. Nick Marsh. All right, Nick Marsh, had the little spat, got a lot of attention. Broadcast showed it. And then later on in the broadcast, the two got together, reconciled. We had seemed to iron some things out. It's been a talking point this week. Jonathan Smith talked about it. Lindgren was asked about it. Childs was asked about it. Everybody's saying all the right things. Looks like everything's good. 2 competitive guys. As Lindgren said, as Smith said, those guys love each other. They're, they sit next to each other on the plane. They, hey, man, Cleves and Morris Peterson used to have those spats too, but they didn't do it in front of the cameras. Halftime of the Iowa State game, Cleves, choke slammed Peterson. These guys have known each other since 5th grade. What are you going to do? So no big deal as long as they can build from it and maybe even get tighter from here.
Kind of like you and me.
You and me.
In the car for 9 hours. There's times where you want to choke me and there's times I want to choke you, but we always come out of that stronger for it.
It was Jake Leskow did a great job also traveling with us to Nebraska and drove. So Jake, it's an experience for Jake, I think. Poor guy.
I told him I felt bad for him.
Poor guy had to deal with us. But anyway, hey, it's autumnal. Michigan accent. I guess that's no accent. But the leaves have changed. It's about 52 degrees. And noon on Saturday, it's going to feel like college football, noon kickoff, like it's 1977 or something.
Oh, yeah, man. Open the windows, put the duvet back on the bed. It's last night. We're going to have a frost tonight. So, yeah, it's going to feel good out there. And, we were just at Nebraska where it was about 90 degrees, and it felt like we were out at Arizona State circa whenever we last went out to Arizona State. But it does feel like football, and I think that's going to help keep guys fresh as well. I want to mention before we sign off, Dontavius Nash, he got his first good amount of reps last weekend. Versatile defensive back, transfer from East Carolina, and we found out a little bit more today about why he hasn't played. And it's good to know that they don't talk about injuries. Unless they're asked ad nauseum about them. And Dontavius Nash is a guy that got injured coming into training camp, didn't practice a whole lot. Now they're trying to work him back into the mix. And I do think that one of the things that he gives you versatility in the defensive backfield. But going back to what you were talking about, Rossi's saying that the coverage was better was as good as it's been in the slot area. Ade Willie's a really good nickelbacker, has been really solid. He's very physical, and he helps them against the run. But a guy like Dontavius Nash or Marion Smith and other guys that have been working in there, they give you a little bit more of a coverage aspect. But Dontavius Nash is a versatile type dude, and you can ask him to do a lot. And when you see this time of year guys starting to go down, Josh Eaton getting dinged up a little bit, he's been fighting through it. But when you see those guys getting dinged up, it's nice to have a guy like Dontavius Nash able to pitch relief or play even bigger role than that. Not only him, but Aiden West continuing to come on.
Yeah.
So it's good to see that kind of development going on in the defensive backfield, because Nikai Martinez is still day-to-day, and life goes on without him. And having a guy like Dontavius Nash starting to, find his way, and then Aiden West starting to hit his stride and playing less like a freshman is going to be a benefit for Michigan State's defensive backfield moving forward.
Yeah, Aiden West has some wheels. Rossi talking about today is going to be good at some point. Going to be really good at some point, they think. Dontavius Nash, transfer from East Carolina. Of all the transfers coming in on the defensive side of the ball, I thought he was the best in terms of what I was impressed with last year's film. At East Carolina, he'd play corner, and he played press corner. They weren't trying to, hide him or anything. He played some safety too. That's that versatility you're talking about. And then we didn't see him. It's to the point like last week I was going to ask, is he still on the team? And then boom, he's out there in the field. And the first day that he's activated, he's playing 10, 15 snaps and has a role. Comes in just at the right time. And I think he's a guy that he's eager to be at this level, and it's good to have him in the bullpen as Michigan State tries to continue to square away that defense. We'll see if they get it done against UCLA. Got to win this game. Got to show some improvement. They got to play better than they did last week in terms of operational things. Win this game, and got Indiana. And the thing about Indiana, they got this huge game way out west, Paul. It's a big showdown. Prove it game for Indiana. They've been trying to prove it for 2 years, and no one still believed them about last year. They're putting in all these chips into this game against a good Oregon team, and then they got to come all the way back and play this Michigan State team they destroyed last year.
Yeah.
Careful.
I'm a big
college football.
Yeah, human nature's human nature, and it's hard to get out of the way of human nature sometimes.
And in this day and age, we're still seeing how the trends are all going to balance out with the West Coast part of Big Ten football. USC has been a different team at home than they are when they come to the Midwest. We'll see if that continues also. But Indiana's got a big one this weekend. We'll see the week after that when Michigan State goes down to Bloomington.
I'll say that Michigan State, even though they lost, by a fair amount to USC, I think they handled their West Coast trip better than a lot of these other teams. And I'm going to keep an eye on that. Like because every one of the power conferences have coast to coast type scenarios now, and it's been nasty. I mean, it's been ugly with a lot of these teams making significant travel. Now, there's been exceptions. You look at Washington did a nice job of going to Maryland.
They did.
And getting the job done.
I think it's easier coming out here than it is going out there.
I agree, but I'm just
did.
saying.
Washington, they did.
It's something that we don't. It's talked about, but. I think we just assume, because we've seen it in the NFL for so many years, these are college kids and not pros. They've got to go to class. They've got a whole bunch of other different things. They're not, they haven't played, as many years as guys in the NFL. So we assume, because we see it in the NFL all the time, that it's just a fact of life and people can deal with it. It's not. We saw a little bit with basketball. I thought Michigan State played its worst basketball last year on that West Coast trip. They've done it before. Michigan State's basketball team has a lot of experience preparing and making those trips out there. They didn't play well out on the West Coast. I thought Michigan State football played pretty good under the circumstances, given that it was such a late game. But there's a lot of teams out there that are going to be dealing with these travel nightmares, and there's only, like I've said this before, there's only so much you can do. You can try to put your team in the best possible situation to handle those type of things, but compression tights are only going to do so much for you. Hydration's only going to do so much for you.
And a lot of times it's the week after you go out there. Exactly. In 2022, Michigan State went out there and got destroyed by Washington, came back and just couldn't get right all week practice-wise. Was blown out by Minnesota. So Ohio State's Ohio State. They're a different animal. They went out there, they handled Washington. Washington hung with them for a while. It was a good game for 2.5 quarters. And then Ohio State came back here and destroyed Minnesota. Ohio State's different. Right. Different cast characters. Michigan State has been fortunate. They've had a bye week after the West Coast trip. They didn't win at Nebraska, but those things can wear on you for a while. Indiana does not have a bye week after the West Coast trip. We'll see how Penn State's got every reason. I think they're playing this weekend. I don't know. They got every reason to get back into shape this week. But we'll see what Indiana looks like in 2 weeks when Michigan State goes down there to Bloomington. And if you're a Michigan State fan, you're hoping that Michigan State is 4-2 at that point. Got to take care of business against UCLA.
Yeah, and you're also hoping that Indiana overlooks them, which would be human nature. And I wouldn't be surprised.
Either
Either
way, Indiana's going to have an adrenaline dump. Either way.
Oh yeah, for sure. And we've seen that even with some of the best D'Antonio era teams that we've covered. I think a couple times they played like a Minnesota or something like that was down, and you're like, oh, their starting quarterback's not going to play. It's going to be a bloodbath, and then it ends up where you got to eke it out in the fourth quarter. That's why football is so difficult, because the marathon aspect of these power conferences, when you play a 9-game conference schedule and it's coast to coast, it adds up.
And college football is a little less predictable now than it was 5 years ago. And Indiana, Michigan State, you had X number of road games. I don't know which one I'd want to trade out to be a road game. I wouldn't want to be going out to play UCLA. But Indiana, we're going to talk about that in 2 weeks. Indiana's fortunate that one's at home. Because if they were going on the road 2 straight after the West Coast, I think Big Ten tries to protect against that. But Indiana's rolling. They're a top 10 team. One of the talks of college football. We'll see how they do this weekend. We'll see how Michigan does out at USC. And we'll see how the Spartans do against UCLA. A lot of interesting ones. And college football, a lot of fun. Anything else, Paul? Having fun here in East Lansing at the Perlis Plaza, East Lansing, Michigan, with the Spartans, with the VCast, SpartanMag.com.